我们继续回来跟卜睿哲先生来谈台美关系。Mr. Bush, recently there's a several upgrade of Taiwan-U.S. relationship. I think you must be aware of this, like the meeting directly by David Lee with John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, and also the name change of the Taiwan organization in charge of U.S. relations. This upgrade or the normalization process between Taiwan and U.S., would it continue? Would it upgrade to a certain level that it would near full recognition?
That's a good question. I think we have to recall that this process of liberalization, let's call it that, began in 1994 with the Taiwan Policy Review. That was stimulated by the fall of the Soviet Union and Tiananmen. And there were a number of members of Congress who believed that we should have a more open and friendly relationship with Taiwan, but they restrained themselves because of the Soviet Union problem and the need for China's cooperation. Well, with Tiananmen and Taiwan's democratization and no more Soviet Union, they said, what are we waiting for? And so the Taiwan Policy Review started it. Each administration has found ways to liberalize the conduct of our relationship with Taiwan. Some of these are not well known. Perhaps the virtue or the success of doing them is because they're done quietly. I think each step can be well justified by the circumstances, the changing nature of our relationship, the changing nature of Taiwan's relationship with the world. I think, however, it would be wrong to assume that this is just going to have a cumulative effect in a change in the fundamental nature of our relationship. You know, in 1978, as part of the normalization deal, we pledged to the People's Republic of China that we would conduct substantive relations with Taiwan on an unofficial basis. We have been able skillfully to evolve our definition of unofficiality in ways that are good for Taiwan. But I don't think that we can realistically expect that we could go back to a two-China policy or a one China, one Taiwan policy. I think that there's a certain line which, if we crossed it, Beijing would end its official diplomatic relations with us, and that would probably create too much trouble. We are able to do a lot with Taiwan in the context of unofficial relations, and let's work on expanding that benefit.
But has Beijing not aware that Washington have been step by step edging toward this red line already? I mean, you see the Chinese defense minister have been making a very stern warning during the Shangri-La talk. And this, I think, is probably the strongest wording we heard for the past few years now. And do you think that China would try to do something to prevent this from happening, or is it try to insert the Taiwan issue every time there's a bilateral talks from now on?
Well, when they have bilateral talks, they insert Taiwan all the time, and we're ready for it. We know that,
right?
And we have our answers ready. I think Beijing is aware of a lot of these steps.
And they cannot do anything about it?
Well, they can express their displeasure,
Right.
but one reason that it's easier for them to tolerate is that a lot of these things we do quietly. And we do not create a situation where they feel that they have been humiliated, that they've lost face because we've done it in a public way. And, you know, that I think we understand that this is a skillful way to do it. I don't know where exactly the line is. You know, what I might have thought was the line 20 years ago or 10 years ago has been passed. You know, our relations with Taiwan are the better for it. Now, I mean, you refer to Minister Wei's comments. I'm not sure that what he had to say was that different from what's been said before. I think that under the current circumstances of U.S.-PRC relations and U.S.-Taiwan relations, maybe there was a need seen to toughen up the language a little bit. But I think we need to step back and say, you know, number one, the reason that China has not fulfilled its goals with respect to Taiwan is not because the DPP government is engaged in pursuing Taiwan independence. It's just not true. You know, what's the evidence? Let me start over. It's not true that the PRC has failed to achieve its objectives concerning Taiwan because of our military relationship with Taiwan. The reason the PRC hasn't achieved its objectives vis-a-vis Taiwan is that its basic offer for solving the problem is so unacceptable here. You know, that formula was created almost 40 years ago. Since then, the world has changed, the United States has changed, Taiwan has changed, but the formula stays the same. Maybe if China wanted to make progress, it should adjust the formula in ways that would be more appealing to the people in Taiwan. I mean, the main way that Taiwan changed, that we all had to take account of, was it became a democracy. The people gained a seat at the table. And it's hard for Beijing to adjust to that.
China had been refusing to talk to Taiwan because DPP government would not like to confirm the 92 consensus. But do you think that would change after this presidential elections with the new government? And even when Ms. Tsai re-elected as a new president term, do you think China still would change its policy and restart this kind of dialogue with Ms. Tsai in her new term?
Well, I certainly hope so. I don't know what's going to happen. I would ask a few questions going back to May of 2016. Where did China gain the right to insist that President Tsai 表态 in a certain way if there was going to be coexistence? I don't recall President Tsai making similar demands of Beijing, right? Was this a good way to get things started? Second, you know, even if President Tsai did not 表态 in the way that Beijing wanted to, in the very explicit way that they were demanding, she did address the issue of the 1992 consensus. She did address the issue of the core connotation, which I think was the harder issue.
Right.
That was the more difficult issue, particularly as a DPP president. Couldn't one say that there was the possibility of some strategic ambiguity here, and that ambiguity could be useful in creating coexistence? I mean, the United States has used ambiguity with China for the whole history of our relationship, and China found it valuable. Even if you accept that the government in Beijing had reasons to mistrust President Tsai, and even if you understand that they would want some sort of reassurance that their mistrust was unjustified, isn't it also true that Taiwan has reasons to mistrust the intentions of the mainland? So if that's the case, if mistrust is mutual, then trust building, which would be a good thing, that has to be done in a mutual way as well. And so I think, I don't know what was going on in the thinking of Chinese leaders, but I think they missed an opportunity.
In this coming election, do you think China would try to influence Taiwan to a degree that it wants to twist Taiwan into the direction or the mold that China prefer?
I don't know. I certainly hope not. I actually think that it is in China's interest that the upcoming election be free and fair, and that it reflect very well the wishes of Taiwan voters, and that whoever is elected have the legitimacy of having won a democratic election. President Trump gets very angry when people raise Russia's interference. And the main reason he does that is because he believes that this calls into question the legitimacy of his election. And it's very important for him to feel that he was legitimately elected. I think it's very important for any leader of Taiwan to believe that they were legitimately elected. I think it's in China's interest too. Let me say one thing about the United States in this regard. I truly believe that when it comes to elections here, we really are neutral. We understand that it's the voters of Taiwan who will pick their leader, not the United States. It would be inappropriate for us to do that. And we'll do our best to work with whoever is elected. What's fundamentally important is not the identity of the occupant of the office of the president, but what their policies are. And do they fit with those of the United States or not? And if they don't quite fit, we'll talk about it. And we've had lots of conversations along these lines. I've been a part of some of them. But we have so much respect for democracy and for what the people here have achieved that we really do want to leave the choice up to them.
Actually, you just answered my last question.
Oh, sorry.
but in a different way, because I want to ask you this, because when American guest is in Taiwan, people always ask them two questions, especially recently. One is, who do you think that the U.S. is going to support in the coming presidential election? You just answered that. Yeah. And the second would be, is Taiwan going to be the bargaining chip for Washington to dealing with Beijing? And I'm not asking you about the answer, but I want to ask you about what kind of mentality do you think why Taiwanese is so concerned about those two questions?
Okay. I think the mentality behind the first question is that, let's face it, Taiwan is dependent on the United States. Taiwan voters wouldn't like to see a situation where there's a deep clash between America's leader and Taiwan's leader. The way to deal with that is to elect a good leader here and for us to elect a good leader there, and hopefully we will. I think the mentality behind the second one flows from history. That there actually have been times when we have acted unilaterally concerning Taiwan's future, when it was not possible to consult with the people in Taiwan about their wishes, or we were unwilling to do so. And particularly in the decisions that the Nixon administration, the Carter administration took concerning diplomatic relations with China, there was a feeling that the ROC's interests were sacrificed for the sake of a relationship which was, the future of which was uncertain at the time, and which, now we've already talked about the state of it today. I'm afraid that Donald Trump has invigorated this fear and by suggesting that Taiwan might be used as a bargaining chip. I think there was a lot of pushback from that. I was one source of the pushback because I had so much respect for Taiwan's democratic system and the leaders that the people had elected, and that a recognition by several administrations that if there's going to be a resolution of the differences between Beijing and Taipei, the people of Taiwan should really have a say. The idea that we would sacrifice their interests for the sake of something, some other objective, is, I think, would betray our own values.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
It was very informative and
well,
very
I hope so.
interesting.
Good questions.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
谢谢各位收看，我们下次见。